Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, here with a Halloween video. It's Michael Myers Monday, after all. Here to discuss the law enforcement side of Halloween. And I am going to start with Lee Brackett, but before I do, I want to give this setting. Well before Brackett or Deputy Hunt or Bo Star's Sheriff Meeker, Ben Meeker, you had this event happen in 1963 where a young boy named Michael Audrey Myers murdered his sister in her upstairs bedroom with a large butcher knife. And it happened on Halloween, obviously, as we all know. So a crime occurred in a small town. And what are small towns? Small towns are supposed to be safe. They're not the threat of the big city. Uh, they're not the threat of the gun violence, the drug violence, the gangs, etc., etc., etc. Small towns are a humble community, and small towns are a tightly knit community for the most part, from a fictional sense. Um, so here is the small town of Haddonfield, and you notice something really strange before you meet the law enforcement side of this. You notice many things about the murder itself, and then the aftermath of the murder. Here's Michael Myers unmasked by his parents, standing in the yard holding a large knife, and all they can say is, Michael? Unmasked. It's a very strange occurrence, to say the least. Now, also, we have Michael as an adult many, many, many years later, in 1978, escaping Smiths Grove, Warren County Sanitarium. And his doctor, Dr. Sam Loomis, played by the late great Donald Pleasance, phones ahead and tells the police that he's coming. Then he meets Sheriff Lee Brackett. Now, look, all these sheriffs have this in common, have many things in common. One, they're the sheriff of the small town of Haddonfield. Two, most of them are family men and have families. So they're not just protecting the town, they're protecting their own interest, not just their job, their families. Um, this is something that you would see in certain westerns, but it's also something you didn't see in westerns where the sheriff didn't have a family. He was basically a lone wolf. This isn't the case here. Here you have Sheriff Lee Brackett, who has a daughter, who has a wife, as we're going to learn in Halloween 2 as well. But he isn't alone in dealing with Michael Myers. Many people, in a weird way, are dealing with the legend that surrounds the Myers house, or are dealing with the invisible force that we're being told is the boogeyman. And it leads the question, when you watch Halloween, did Michael hear this as a kid? So, and what I'm meaning is, you hear Laurie Strode say about the boogeyman, you hear Tommy Doyle say about the boogeyman. It leads to the question of, how long has the boogeyman really been being talked about in this movie and in this town's history? And it's a great question and a great hypothesis. Now, with Brackett, how does he address this? Really, he doesn't in every way. The most he addresses it, and it's not much, is he says that most people consider the Myers house haunted. And Loomis says they may be right. Now, do I think Brackett thinks that? I don't know. I think that's one of the best parts about Halloween. Not all the cards from the character standpoint are laid on the table. The most you know about Brackett going into this, other than being the sheriff of Haddonfield, is that his daughter is Annie Brackett, who happens to be has the pleasure and displeasure of being best friends with Laurie Strode, who's going to be stalked by your antagonist. Again, as much as Halloween is about fate, it's also about luck, or in this case, being unlucky if you happen to be friends with Laurie Strode. If you're friends with Laurie Strode, you may have wanted to take out that insurance policy on your life. So Sheriff Brackett does address the Myers house. Now, does he personally believe? I said I don't know, and I don't. And I love that fact. You're not getting a lot of information out of Brackett other than here's the one thing Brackett knows, and it's the only thing I think he honestly cares to know. There's no crime in this town. In every way, I think, I looked at these lawmen very carefully. And they all of them, for the most part, either remind me of a fictional Western character or a real life lawman. For Lee Brackett, he reminds me of the sheriff of Fire Creek. And if you've never seen the movie Fire Creek, it stars James Stewart, or Jimmy Stewart, if you want to call him, and his pal Henry Fonda. Now, Henry Fonda plays his second and only villain role in film history. With Halloween, is Brackett Fonda's character? No. Brackett is more Jimmy Stewart's character. Jimmy Stewart is the sheriff of a very small town called, Fire Creek. And Fire Creek, there's no crime. There's no gangs. There's no violence. And Jimmy Stewart is so accustomed to this. His character is so used to this that he doesn't want the violence. And any little nitpick thing, he's going to pretty much let go because he doesn't want the trouble. He doesn't want to fight. And in every way, it doesn't make him cowardice. No, he just wants to be a peaceful person. And in every way, I look at Brackett as this, a peaceful person. Somebody who doesn't want to necessarily fight. And why I say this is, look at the robbery that happens in broad daylight. Look at what Brackett does. He dismisses it in every way. It's just probably kids, meaning I have in every way, though he's not saying it directly, he's saying it indirectly. I have no intent on pursuing this any further. And I take that as, hey, this is a small town sheriff. He's going to let some things slide to maintain the peace. And in every way, it's not a bad move. Hey, if I have to let a little misdemeanor like a robbery go, and that's all really a robbery was in the 70s, a goddamn misdemeanor, I'm going to let it go. It's not a murder, for God's sakes. It's not what happened in 63. So, now, after he tells his daughter it was just probably kids, and she tells him you blame him everything on kids. After they leave, he meets Dr. Sam Loomis. I feel like Donald Pleasance is more the sheriff in this movie. Donald Pleasance and Sam Loomis is more of your protagonist than what Lee Brackett is. That's fair to say. And so is Jamie Lee Curtis. The law itself is not your main protagonist in this movie. It's more of a spectator role in a way, but without the actual scene of everything that goes on or that happens. He talks about what happens. For instance, outside the Myers house, when Loomis scares little Lonnie Lamb away, you have a moment where, when Dr. Loomis is outside the Myers home and he scares Lonnie Lamb away, after this happens, Lee Brackett taps him on the shoulder and scares him in return. And what does Lee Brackett ask him? Are you okay? And then he proceeds to tell him there's nothing going on other than parking, trick-or-treating, and kids getting high. You might say, well, wait, that's not nothing. No, you're absolutely right. This proves my point, though. Again, kids bending the law, somewhat breaking it, right? Guess what? So what? The sheriff isn't going to enforce a misdemeanor. So what? Let the kids have a good time. It's Halloween, for God's sakes. Now, you might say, resident of Collinwood, what about that body outside of town? Isn't that evidence enough that Donald Pleasance's character is right? Look, we, the audience, when you first watched Halloween, you knew Donald Pleasance's character was right. You knew Sam Loomis was right. You knew absolutely that his character was going to be right. Just like today, Sam Loomis is the one character that is never really wrong. And if they tell you he is, they're probably most likely going to burn in hell. Anyway, no, look, it's not that the body is in evidence, the body outside of town, the mechanic. What is that body really, other than dead, other than dead body? And where is it? Number one, it's outside of town. As a fictional lawman, you may have heard this in a movie. Don't jump at shadows, right? Though the body isn't a shadow, that dead body doesn't exactly prove to Brackett that Michael was in Haddonfield. All that proves is that Michael may or may not have murdered someone else and stole their goddamn clothes. So, but again, it doesn't maintain that Myers is coming to town. Yes, we know Myers is coming to town. It's like saying Santa Claus is coming to town. We know it's going to happen. We know it's not going to happen. But our kids will tell you, yes, it's going to goddamn happen. Look, we knew Myers is coming to town, right? That's what I'm stressing. So here, Lee Brackett's character, though he's probably told about the body, and though we don't hear it, he's probably like, okay, and yeah, there's a dead body. What does that dead body confirm? Okay, there's a dead body. Okay, maybe Michael Myers did it. I'm not dismissing he did, but where is that body located? Outside the town of Haddonfield. And no, Brackett himself doesn't specifically need a dead body to drop in Haddonfield to prove that Michael's there. What's the one other thing Brackett would need? This isn't hard. What's the one thing Loomis keeps looking for? He's not specifically looking for Michael. He's looking for the fucking car. The car is stolen. The car Loomis and Nurse Marrington Whittington are driving in earlier in the film. That's what Loomis is looking for. That's what he keeps looking around for. He's not looking for Myers specifically. He's looking for the car. If he spots that car, he can point to Sheriff Lee Brackett and say, see, I told you so. And in every way, shape, and form, that's exactly what the proof Brackett does need to know that Loomis is right. Look, say what you want about Lee Brackett, but that car is something he never actually sees, and Loomis doesn't see till near the end of the movie. Again, this is not a character flaw. This isn't a character error. These are characters who are very well written, who need one thing: proof. Pleasance's character, Loomis, needs proof of what he's saying. Guess what, folks? Sheriff Lee Brackett, who's your law enforcement officer, guess what he's wanting? Proof that what you're saying is true. Again, I think the biggest misconception about Lee Brackett is, oh, he just wants people to die. No, that's not true. Oh, he's just looking for a dead body for Loomis. No, he's looking for the one thing that Loomis probably told him that we never hear. Hey, my car was also stolen. Okay, we do have to give that was probably said, right? Though we don't hear it as audience members. So what do you think Brackett himself is going around looking for? The goddamn car! He's not just looking for Myers himself either, though I'm sure that's happening with him and his men. They're also looking for the stolen car. Because if they spot the stolen car in town, well, like I said earlier, guess what that proves? Michael Myers is in the town of Haddonfield, and he's here to kill people. Again, Sheriff Lee Brackett is a great character, but he's a character who did not want to fight, and when a fight occurred, Did he run from it? No. Just like Jimmy Stewart's character didn't run from it, he had to accept what was coming. And though he doesn't get an actual chance to face it, which that's the biggest regret in this movie, though he somewhat faces it in Halloween Kills and gets murdered. Look, like I said, Sheriff Brackett is not your main protagonist. Loomis is. But he's not a dumbed down character, nor is he a worthless character or a character that is wasted. He's a character who's a sheriff of a small town who wants a peaceful town and really is not trying to overstep his bounds or enforce too much law to be too strict. Just like Jimmy Stewart's character in Fire Creek, he'll let a lot go to preserve a little peace, with the exception of one thing, and this does happen in Fire Creek: murder. Jimmy Stewart's character arrests the guy for murder. And really, look, Sheriff Lee Brackett, what's his best contribution to this franchise? It's wanting the proof of the car. Look, say what you want about that. Because if you're a sheriff, we love Donald Pleasence. We all do. We love Sam Loomis. But you're a cop. Someone's telling you, hey, there's a killer in town. There's a killer in town. Are you going to jump at every shadow? No, you're not. You're wanting the one thing that's going to prove this guy correct. Proof. And no, again, proof doesn't necessarily come in a dead body. Proof comes in the car. And hey, look, the first thing they find is a dead dog. That's a dead body inside. What does Brackett say? Could have been a skunk. Brackett is quick to dismiss the dead dog. I rest my case, Your Honor. Okay, now to Deputy Hunt. In every way, Deputy Hunt, what you might want to call in the Old West, is a deputy sheriff. He sort of becomes interim sheriff in a way when Brackett steps aside in Halloween 2. Not literally, mind you, but he is the deputy. He's next in line to be in charge. It's what, again, in the Old West, they would call this a deputy sheriff. Nowadays, we just call it, well, that's the sheriff's deputy. It's the same thing, but in reverse. So here's Gary Hunt, and I really like his character. He's very tough, he's very thorough, but he has a deniability a bit. He's quick to dismiss Sam Loomis at first. I saw him burning up. You saw a man in a mask. I got to be sure it was him. Look, is Gary Hunt a bad deputy? No. In fact, he's a very interesting character. So who does he remind me of from a Western sense? Is he sort of Jimmy Stewart's character in Fire Creek as well? No. I would dare say that this character is a lot of different Western characters, actually. Now, I know some people haven't seen this movie. In many ways, he's sort of who's the actor? Oh God, I'm trying to think. He's Anthony Perkins. He's somewhat Anthony Perkins' character in Tin Star. He is somewhat oh God. Oh shit. I'm trying to think of his name. Give me a second. Trying to think of I can't place the sheriff's name, but the sheriff in The Rifleman. He sort of reminds me of that character. He's willing to enforce the law, but like his predecessor, he wants one thing: proof. Look, all small town sheriffs do rely on one thing, and it may sound annoying to some, but it is true: facts. Facts and truth. Nothing tells the truth more than your own eyes. Meaning, if he would have actually saw the car and saw Michael Myers, well, again, going back to Brackett, he would have believed Loomis. Now, with the benefit of hindsight being 2020, they now know in Halloween 2 that Michael Myers is in town. And no one's denying that fact now. In fact, it's all over the goddamn news. But what we're denying now is that Michael Myers is now still alive after somebody who somewhat matched his description became more fried than a became more grilled than a goddamn steak. So how do you envision your Ben? How do you like your Ben Tramer? Rare, medium rare, or well done? I prefer mine well done. Um, like, how, God. Oh shit. So, and it's fitting. I talked about seeing with your own eyes. Well, what does Gary Hunt see? What does Deputy Hunt see? What's the first thing he really gets to see? Somebody on fire that matches Michael Myers' description. They saw a man in a mask. They don't know that that man's Michael Myers, but Gary Hunt is quick to assume that it was. And is he wrong? No, he's not wrong. But here's the biggest differences between Deputy Gary Hunt and our sheriff, Lee Brackett. The sheriff is, though, too, he's quick to dismiss Loomis. He doesn't, though he's more humoring him than keeping a goddamn open mind about Michael Myers actually being out there. Again, he's not wrong. He hasn't seen the car. See what I just said a few moments ago. With this, we know Gary Hunt has the benefit of hindsight. He knows Loomis is right, and Brackett hates him for being right and his daughter being dead. And Brackett has every right to do so. It is his kid, after all. But with this, Gary Hunt has seen a man be, well, lit on fire and, well, cooked better than steak. So he comes to the body, which is, again, charred. They determined the kid's maybe 17 or 18. Loomis says Michael Myers is 21. And Loomis insists to Gary Hunt, Deputy Gary Hunt, we have to assume Michael Myers is still alive. Now, here's where Gary Hunt really separates himself from with Lee Brackett. Had this been Lee Brackett, would he have continued it? I don't think so. He would have left it stay here, in my opinion. With Gary Hunt's mind isn't just on that kid he just sees laying, the person he sees laying there charred. He's thinking of Lee Brackett's daughter. He's thinking about the bodies that were pulled out the house. This is more than enough evidence for Gary Hunt to continue the search. They can't determine who the body is, who the body really is, but they know whoever it is, it's not old enough to be Michael Myers. And that's proof enough for Gary Hunt to continue the search. It's very well done here. It really separates Gary Hunt from Lee Brackett. Also, a little similar to the actual the rifleman, or if you will, Richard Boone's character in Have Gun Will Travel, Paladin. You have a character who is wanting to see justice done in every way, shape, and form. So he wants Myers one thing: caught, not killed. There's a big difference here. There's a difference here between Deputy Gary Hunt and Sheriff Omar Barker, who we're going to see in the Halloween trilogy. And there's a difference too. Though there is the original lynch mob doesn't come in Halloween 4. It initially comes in this movie, Halloween 2, when kids are throwing rocks at the Myers house. I think I saw Mark Gilman in the crowd. uh, no, that's a little fun on my buddy. So here is Gary Hunt, who's telling the townspeople, okay, knock it off. We're not going to, in every way, shape, and form, he's saying, you're not going to form this lynch mob here. This is not going to stand on my watch. And I love that fact. When he says, go home, knock it off, that's exactly what he's telling them. And I love it. It's every bit of a John Wayne character you would see in an old Western movie, or if you would, some of Clint Eastwood's character, specifically Hannum High. Um, now, with this, with this character, unfortunately, time is not on his side, and by time, I mean Donald Pleasance's Sam Loomis is not going to get to stick around, as the hospital has sent a marshal to retrieve him. Gary Hunt's character looks defeated here when Loomis leaves because he realizes here's, without saying words, he says, there goes my best chance at catching the killer. And I love it. It's a great scene, and it's one of the most underrated in Halloween 2, and hell, Halloween history. Watch Gary Hunt. Watch his reaction when Loomis leaves. He hands his goddamn head because he knows there goes my best shot at catching Myers. And he knows it. And I love the fact Gary Hunt, before Loomis leaves, has bought in himself, has more than well bought in that yes, Michael Myers is out there in the town of Haddonfield, and we must find him and stop him. Gary Hunt is one of the most underrated characters in Halloween history and as a protagonist. And yes, he is a bit more of a protagonist than, well, Sheriff Lee Brackett. Though I love Lee Brackett and he's a great character, Gary Hunt deserves a lot of credit because what Gary Hunt really sees is what his predecessor didn't get to see. I'm not talking about the dead bodies. Sheriff Sheriff Brackett unfortunately did see that with his daughter. No, he gets to see the aftermath of what Myers has really caused, panic and fear. And really, it's a thing that Halloween 2 does well before the Halloween trilogy ever thought about doing. And it's really well done in this movie, and Gary Hunt deserves a lot of credit for trying to keep the peace in said movie. Unlike Sheriff Omar Baker, who doesn't get to shut the rioters down, Deputy Gary Hunt, in a sense, does. When he tells them to go home and knock it off, that's what he's telling them. Not on my watch. You're not going to form a posse. You're not going to be a bunch of vigilantes here. Okay, you threw some stones at a house, beat it and go home. And I love him for it. He's one of my favorite lawmen in Halloween history. And I'm going to get to my next right here, right now. Those stars Ben Meeker. He's every bit the quintessential cowboy. And no, he's not wearing a cowboy hat. If you want to, he's every bit a John Wayne character that he's the biggest John Wayne sort of figure that we've gotten in a Halloween movie. He's also, if you want to be a more precise, want me to be more precise in who he reminds me of, he reminds me of the sheriff of El Dorado. He reminds me of Robert Mitchum's character in El Dorado, and he sort of reminds me of Robert Mitchum. Both great actors. I love the tough guy persona we get here in Halloween 4. It's far more different than what we got with Sheriff Lee Brackett and Deputy Hunt. Sure, he is quick to dismiss Loomis. Look, every sheriff should be a doubting Thomas at first, because you don't want them to fall for some bullshit, right? Well, then he listens after his deputy grabs him and says, hey, maybe you ought to listen to this. And he does listen to this. This is something you would see in old Western movies or TV series where the deputy would grab the sheriff and say, hey, maybe you ought to hear this guy out. It's a great little subtle thing in Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, and I love it for it. I also love the gunplay in this movie. It is, if look, I love Halloween 4, but if you don't, and if you watch it for no other fucking reason, watch it for the gunplay. It is absolutely bitchin'. From shotgun blast to 45s, we have it in this movie, and it's beautiful. Now, the biggest difference here is we do get a posse formed in this movie. Now, to quote Emilio Estevez, William H. Bonney, the posses were too big for the law to stop them, and well, because the so-called law had no intention of stopping them. Now, with this, I'll say this: it's not that Ben Meeker didn't want to stop the posse; he didn't have a police force to stop him. This is a first in Halloween history where the police force is actually taken out by our resident serial killer, Michael Audrey Myers. And it's beautiful in a way. It really gives that lone wolf feel from Bo Starr's Ben Meeker's standpoint. God, am I really alone in all this? No, he's not. He does have Donald Pleasence and Sam Loomis, but Pleasence and Loomis is always wanting to run off to the Myers house, or the Carruthers house in this case. But he does have a posse of men on the streets of Haddonfield, shooting anybody who moves. Just that's Todd Hollister. Oh, wait, you can't. God damn. I love this movie, and it's really fun. Ben Meeker is a character who has to deal with a lot of things. He has to deal with the complete aftermath of Halloween 1 and 2 and the fear of Michael Myers times 10. He also has to deal with the people who didn't get to avenge their murdered kin in the first two movies, and now you hear that in Halloween 4. One of Ben's kids, apparently got axed by Michael Myers, or sorry, knifed. Sorry, I don't want to confuse Michael with Jason for anybody. But Michael Myers apparently killed one of Ben's kids, or, Ben's son. So he wants blood for his son, and he will get it despite Sheriff Ben Meeker's protest. And he says, let it be, Earl, let it be. That's what Ben says. Basically, he's repeating Gary Hunt's form. Not on my watch, let it go. No, Ben Meeker has no police force to back him up here. And and you might say, well, why does Donald Pleasence and Sam Loomis play devil's advocate for the mob? Quite simple. Donald Pleasence no more wants to do this by himself than what Ben Meeker does. So they need some enforcement. Whether they wear a badge or not is beyond the point for Donald Pleasence and Sam Loomis. And I love this. Basically, in every way, shape, and form, you've got to love Donald Pleasence and Sam Loomis for literally baptizing the lynch mob. Beautiful. Beautiful. It is. Like, you ain't got a police force. These men may be the only hope you got. God help us. And what's Ben Meeker to do? It's like, okay, I guess I have no choice, but in every way, though they're not deputies themselves, they're unofficial deputies. And no, they have no intention of bringing in Michael Myers alive. They're not a representation of the law. They're outside the law. Though the law knows they're around, the law can literally do nothing until reinforcements arrive. And that is really, Ben Meeker isn't just, when you think about it, is Ben Meeker really calling the state police for one lone serial killer? No, not really. He's more calling the state police because he knows the lynch mob is in effect. And he's the one guy, along with his other deputy, who gets killed and is a little too cocky for his own good. They can't enforce the law by themselves because they're too outnumbered and too outgunned. Hence is another reason why they need the state police. Yes, Myers is the overall reason, so sorry for the little miss up there. But the lynch mob is the other. It's not that Ben Meeker isn't enforcing the law. He's waiting for backup to arrive when the law comes. In every way, He's wanting he's wanting to be the state police to be John Wayne to his Robert Mitchum. El Dorado, go watch it. Great movie. Great movie. Oh my god. We all know what happens in Halloween 5. Ben Meeker meets his demise. I can't really address the cops in Halloween 6 because I've seen the other version and the cops are more bought and paid for by the cult. So this takes me to really Halloween 7. Okay, we don't get a police force in Halloween 7. We don't even get a sheriff. But what we do get in Landon, Illinois, are the first sighting, ladies and gentlemen, of detectives. Yes, detectives. Some fucking noir in this Halloween franchise. Some yeah, yeah. I love detective stories. I'm a sucker for them. I love The Shadow, after all, which isn't just a detective story, but you get my point. Noir is a big part, is a somewhat part in Halloween H2O. After all, the deduction board is in Loomis's room. But we get detectives, and the detectives have a great banter between each other of whether Michael's alive or not. And it's one of the, by the way, the African American actor is the guy who voices Jet in my favorite anime, Cowboy Bebop, and I love that fact. I love that they got him in this movie. Great actor. Um, so there's no law enforcement. The law enforcement resurrection is more post movie than it is present. So this takes me to Rob Zombie's Halloween's, the re-envisioned Lee Brackett. And I gotta say, and a lot of people are gonna get pissed off at me, and if you are, I apologize in advance. Please don't choke me. I love this version of Lee Brackett because it is far more different than what we got in the original version. This Lee Brackett wants to know everything there is about Michael Audrey Myers. And in fact, that's pretty much exactly what he says to the new Dr. Loomis, um, who's played by Malcolm McDowell. Now, what does he say to Malcolm McDowell when Malcolm McDowell tells him that Michael Myers is on Loomis? He pulls out Loomis's book. He goes, "This book is about a monster. I want you to be razor straight with me." And what he's saying, and that's Western lingo, by the way, I want you to tell me the truth about Michael Audrey Myers. I want to know facts, not fiction. And I love that. Though that's not exactly what gets said, that's pretty much what's being said. And it's one of the most unsung things about that whole movie that everybody misses. If you want to go back and watch Rob Zombie's Halloweens, and I know how some people feel about that, go watch the first one and listen to Sheriff Lee Brackett very carefully when he first interacts with Loomis in his office. It's so good, it's criminally underrated. This man isn't just trying to enforce the law, he's trying to know everything about the person he's pursuing. And I love it. It's so well done and so criminally underrated, it's worth the watch alone. And really, in Halloween 2, in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, though not well liked or well received, and I understand why, I don't love it either. I gotta give Lee Brackett more credit because he is trying to move on from the events of the first proceedings, and rightfully so. He has every reason to believe Michael Myers is dead, and why not? Again, this is a reboot after all. And again, what is he looking for? We know Michael Myers' body is missing. Well, if a body is missing, we can't exactly assume he's dead, now can we? No, but Michael Myers doesn't come around for a good while. And so, even Loomis suggests he's dead. Now, does this bracket believe it? He wants to believe it, but I always get the feeling in this Halloween he doesn't quite believe Myers is dead. But he's doing his best to move on and help raise not just his daughter, but his daughter's best friend, Laurie Strode. Um, the family aspect in this movie should get a little more attention than the first one because pay attention to Lee Brackett's the actor. Oh god, I'm gonna kick myself. The guy who voices Chucky. Uh, I'm old. I'm old. Oh god, I'm old. Brad Dourif, sorry. Now that I got that out there. So Brad Dourif's character really, as an actor, deserves a lot of credit for his performances, and he doesn't get enough of it. Go watch, if nothing else, go watch Brad Dourif's performance. It's very, very underrated. And I like the fact in the first one he's asking all sorts of questions. In the second one, he's not only trying to move on, but once he hears the chaos has started again, he jumps into action feet first. Who does he remind me of? Every Western cowboy you could ever think, from John Wayne to Henry Fonda to Jimmy Stewart. Every character they've ever played has at times jumped into action, and why not? I love it. Good. I love the fact that they're having that sort of Western feel. Now, Sheriff Omar Barker. I talked about on Twitter how, and this is a question. This isn't an observation. So here's my question. And I don't think the writers are going to watch this, but if anybody knows for certain, please let me know. Is Sheriff Omar Barker, is his look and persona sort of taken uh, from real life lawman Bass Reeves? And the reason I ask this is because, you know, Bass Reeves was a master of disguise. He had a very unique. He was in street clothes, and guess what? Our Sheriff Omar Baker is in. He's in it like street clothes. He's in a tie and an overcoat. Also, from the way he wears his cowboy hat and the way his demeanor is, it's very matter of fact tone, and that was Bass Reeves. Um, I somewhat like to think it was. Again, I'm not saying it was. Now, we don't, unfortunately, and I do mean unfortunately, we don't get enough of this character, and that is sad. And I think what the reason is the we've had so much law in Haddonfield. We've had so much law characters throughout the history of Halloween. So how much more can you really say about a law enforcement man? Really, a lot if he's your own character and he's a new character, and he is. I do wish they would have made this character more of a focus because he was interesting to me. And really, his interesting doesn't wane after Halloween Kills. In fact, you sort of wonder what his life was like post Halloween Kills because of what he failed to stop, the goddamn lynch mob. And where I really feel for Sheriff Omar Barker, he was trying to stop the lynch mob. And he failed to do so. In fact, the patient committed suicide, and he has to deal with the consequences of letting it happen or just allowing it to happen because he's so overrun by the people of Haddonfield in a small hospital. It's an aspect I wish Halloween Ends would have paid more tribute to, but doesn't. The character, though wasted a bit, isn't a complete waste of time. How what Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills really paint is, here's a man who is every bit the cowboy. He's not a coward, and though he let the lynch mob get out of hand, there's an old adage: if you can't beat them, join them. It's an old Western adage, really. And really, it's paid tribute to in Halloween Ends. And I don't think they're intentionally paying tribute to it. I just think it happens. Does this make the character discreditable? It makes the character different. I don't think that it makes the character credible or discreditable. It just makes him different. Um, Law enforcements are very tough to make different because usually sheriffs have one or two attitudes. They're very laid back or they're very tough. But with the Halloween franchise, I gotta say this: every sheriff had their own personality and deputy, and I love it for it. Despite my dismay for Rob Zombie's movies and this trilogy, I will give it all that. Each sheriff had their own personality, and that's tough to do. When you keep including law in your movie or law enforcement, It's tough to keep making new personas. And that's exactly what the writers all did. They all made new personas of law, from Lee Brackett to Gary Hunt to Bo Starr's Ben Meeker to the detectives to Sheriff Omar Barker and to Rob Zombie's remake of Lee Brackett. He was different. He wasn't Charles Cypress's Lee Brackett, and that's commendable. Say what you want, and I know you all will. Dislike it if you want, and I understand why. Certainly, again, I don't like Rob Zombie's movies, and I don't love the trilogy, but give the devils their due for creating new personas, despite how they might have not used them very well, especially in the trilogy. Again, I do wish we would have got more. The other thing we really get from Omar Barker is, again, if you can't beat him by the end of by Halloween Ends, he had joined him. He said, "Okay, you want to destroy Michael Myers, destroy him. I'm just going to let you do it this time," because he realized trying to stop it. I think what he realized in Halloween Kills, and that you can take away from this, is it's fruitless to try to stop a bunch of people when you're outmatched and not necessarily outgunned, but outmatched and outnumbered. And that's the one thing I take away most. Again, I'm not calling the character a coward. He's not. It just comes to the point where even law throws up its own hands and says, fuck it. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this Halloween video. The law enforcement of Haddonfield is what this will be. Well, you know what? The law enforcement of Halloween franchise. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a happy Michael Myers Monday.